Hi folks, I'm back, having set up my new computer and new system as best I can. I'm now back on YTCP. Today I'm smoking my new church warden pipe, which I got from Simon. It's a beautiful pipe. Let's look. If you just look at the beautiful grain on it. It was made by Paul's Pipes, by Paul himself. It's got 3 stems, so I can have it as a church warden, as a short stubby, and as a very short, as a poker pipe, and then as a very short stubby pipe. But of course I'll probably use it most of the time as a church warden. And I'm smoking Rattery's Red Rappery. One of the first videos I watched when I came back was a video by Matches talking about a sofa that they had in one of the nursing homes. It's well worth going to watch, and I'm not going to say anything more about the sofa. But it reminded me of a lady who used to sleep in our garden when I was at a vicarage. She was a bag lady. She spent her time on the streets, usually drinking alcohol. And then when she'd had enough, she would come and sleep in our garden. She did have a house of her own, but she very rarely got sober enough to make her way home. And she had a boyfriend who had a house, but again, she was very rarely sober enough to find out where he lived. So she would sleep in our garden because she waited until we woke up and then she had breakfast with us. Well, I say with us. She sat on a chair in the garden, and we would give her either sandwiches or cereal or something like that. She would have preferred to have a full English breakfast: bacon, eggs, sausage, potatoes and beans, But so would we, but we couldn't afford it. So she had to make do with what we would give her. And it was quite a big garden that she slept in. And she would find a warm place to sleep. And when it got daylight, she would wake us up, which was all right in winter, although she very rarely slept in the garden in winter. She had to be very drunk to sleep in the vicarage garden in winter. But in summer, she would gradually get earlier and earlier, as daylight came earlier and earlier, and ring the bell for her breakfast. So Carolyn had to say, look, don't ring the bell until you see people moving around, and then you can ring the bell and we'll give you a drink and a cup of tea and some breakfast. When we got to know Mary, she was quite an intelligent lady. Awful problems, and would never change. One of her real antisocial problems was that she'd never washed for years, and the stench was quite interesting, especially because she very rarely managed to make the toilet, except for big jobs. She didn't feel that urine was necessary to remove any item of clothing. Just let it go. But she got to know us quite well. And whilst at times she was a nuisance and she wouldn't accept any real help of getting her off the drink and finding her a proper place and getting her some help to control things. But she would sort of just carry on her life. She was quite happy in a way. She would always ask me for money, and I never gave money to anybody. I would arrange that if they wanted some food, they could go to the local chip shop and would get fish and chips, and I would pay afterwards. And I also left £10 with the desk sergeant at the police station and told anybody who wanted money, if you really need it, go to the police station and ask for the desk sergeant, and he will give you some money. Nobody ever did. But Mary always told me the Roman Catholic priest gave her money. And I used to say, well, Mary, you know what to do. Go down to the Roman Catholic Church. And this particular day, she wanted to go to Our Lady Star of the Sea, which was in another town nearby, and asked me for a lift. And I thought, well, okay, I've got some time this morning, I'll give her a lift. So we got into the car, and I opened the windows and hoped that the wind would blow through and at least keep some of the smell away. It didn't. But anyway, we're driving along, and she kept looking at me and smiling sweetly and said, you know, Vicar, some men pay me for my services. And I thought, well, I'm not. So I said to her, look, Mary, I'd try and steer clear of those men. Don't have anything to do with them because you get nasty diseases from them. And she said, oh, no, I won't, Vicar, I won't. There's nothing I can do for you. No, Mary, there's nothing you can do for me. And we arrived at the next town, and I left her outside the Roman Catholic Church, and presumably she went and got some money. But it took me ages to sort of deodorize the car so that we could get in it without throwing up. But anyway, she used to sleep in the garden, as I say. And one day we had some foxes in the garden. They'd built a dray at the end of the garden, and they were having a family there. And when she found out, she said, those things down there, those wild doggy things, and I said, yes, the foxes. And she said, yes, the foxes. She said, do they bite? And I said, well, they can bite, Mary, if you disturb them or pull them around or anything, they'll bite. And she said, I am not coming here to have my breakfast until you get rid of those dangerous animals, which I was very glad to hear, but she still turned up for breakfast. But to give you an idea how intelligent this lady was and how devious she was, she caused me all sorts of problems at church one day. This lady on the Sundays came up to me absolutely fuming. She was incandescent with rage and said, how dare you? How dare you? And I said, look, what have I done? And she said, how dare you send that filthy, smelly woman to my house for dinner? And I said, I haven't. I've never sent anybody to your house for dinner. And she turned up the other day and said the vicar's sent me for dinner. I said, well, I'm sorry, you've been had. And I had to warn the congregation, that if Mary turned up, I hadn't sent her. She had a boyfriend, as I say, and he was as odd as her in a way. there was a television show that we used to watch with the children called Wurzel Gummidge. And it was this guy who was supposed to have a turnip for a head. He was a scarecrow. And he spoke with a very sort of distinctive voice. And one day her and the boyfriend turned up, and she sort of thought the boyfriend would be able to persuade me to give them money. But he was a really nice man, apart from the smell. And he sort of said to her, "Now come on, Mary, you know they don't give money." And he said it exactly the way that Wurzel Gummidge would say. And Carolyn held my hand and I held her hand, and we managed to get through the conversation without bursting into laughter. The sad fact is that Mary died shortly after we left the parish. Somebody rang me up and told me about it. There was a Conservative club, and she'd fallen asleep in the doorway or near the club. And a couple of young men had come out and urinated all over her and given her a good beating. The Conservative club sort of denied any knowledge of the young men, sort of said that they'd been in the club and hadn't been members, and therefore they'd been asked to leave. But shortly after, Mary died in hospital. So that was quite sad. But I thought I'd tell you about Mary. Despite all her problems, she was quite a nice lady to know in the end. And I feel greatly sorry that she was treated the way she was and that life had been so bad for her. Well, I'm going to end there. I hope you liked the story of Mary, and maybe it gives you a bit of an insight into what vicars and priests and pastors sometimes have to put up with. I suppose I could have called the police and got her removed, but, you know, why? She wasn't doing anybody any harm. Now may God richly bless you. May his love pour down upon you. May he give you new experience each day to make you happy and to expand your mind and your love.